Welcome to our latest PEFC webinar addressing the new European Union regulation on deforestation-free supply chains. And now I would like to welcome Richard. Richard, you are based in Southeast Asia. Can you tell us a little bit about the impact of the EU timber regulation on the ground? Did it have a positive impact?
Well, working in Southeast Asia meant that I worked with smallholders a lot, and we could actually see that the timber regulation could have unintended consequences. It is not always a positive impact on them and could be actually harmful.
Could you maybe explain that a little bit more for us?
Well, my recent experience into the smallholder production systems of rubber showed that this is a production system that is connected to a very complex supply chain, and the EUTR requires land use rights, and many smallholders throughout Southeast Asia have not yet got formal land use rights.
But if they don't have land use rights, wouldn't it be better if we didn't source from them?
Well, the challenge is that they don't only have land use rights, the challenge is that they don't have formal land use rights. And often this has been an informal land use that cannot be verified to be compliant with such a regulation. And this might be due to the government's capacity to issue land allocation and land titles. For example, recently I was in Laos and I was working with a company that is investigating is planning to get PEFC certified, and there's a big producer of 10,000 hectares that has the correct land documents. However, they also have 2,000 hectares of smallholders that they buy from. And when we looked at the implementation of the PEFC controlled sourcing and legality as a key part of that, we could see that only 120 hectares actually had land tenure that would be acceptable to meet the EUTR or the timber regulation.
But what does that really mean in practice?
So, well, in practice, it could mean that the company would have to segregate that material, and they would have to find markets that don't have such regulations, or potentially they could remove those smallholders from the market and cutting them from the supply chain.
So, from your point of view, looking forward to the deforestation regulation, what needs to happen to avoid such unintended consequences?
Well, I think using PEFC's approach, that we can look at some of the issues that the national stakeholders are dealing with, such as the land use rights. And so it is not only about the smallholders in rubber that I talked about. This will be consistent in other production systems such as coffee and cocoa. And this needs to be considered in the implementation act of the Deforestation Regulation. And we need to make sure that it has a positive impact, not only on biodiversity and deforestation, but also on smallholders and their livelihoods. We need to find the right balance, and we hope that we don't see the poorest and most vulnerable people, who are the smallholders that dominate the production systems in Southeast Asia, being punished from perverse impacts of the regulation.
But if they are cut from the supply chain, what does that mean to them, to the people themselves?
Well, using rubber as an example, where people are dependent on that for their daily subsistence and income, we can see that they may be moved away from responsible supply chains and not connected to the market, which pays a better price. it may mean that they change crops and have to expand their subsistence farming into further forests or other land uses.
And of course, for us at PEFC, this is so important because PEFC was founded with a focus on smallholders, so it's vital for us that smallholders do have that market access.
Yes, yeah, I agree that we need to make sure that the systems that get put in place on the ground are ones that are inclusive of the smallholders. Otherwise, it could mean that those smallholders are losing the profitability and losing their basic abilities to develop as they should be entitled to.
Thank you very much, Richard. It was really interesting to get that regional, the Southeast Asian approach, so we really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.